So if somebody is feeling suicidal or they know someone who's suicidal, what should they do for help?
Okay, if it's an emergency situation, never, ever, ever be afraid to ring the ambulance and the guards. At the end of the day, what's the worst can happen? That person is alive and gets the proper help they want. People are afraid sometimes to make those decisions. And I have to say this, which I think is really important. If you're in a situation where you have somebody that you're concerned about, make the decision from the beginning that if things get out of hand, I am going to contact the authorities. Don't, because if you've already made the decision, it's easier when the time comes than trying to think of what to do. So never rule out an emergency situation, straight away getting help. So if a person comes and they're feeling suicidal and stuff, they should be medically checked first. And that means, in most cases, going to a GP, or in some cases, it means going to A&E.
Yeah.
Often what will happen then, you go to the GP will often refer you then to maybe the psychiatric department. For us would be the one here in Drogheda. Sometimes it was sent to A&E, and then A&E will link you in with the local psychiatric department. And then beyond that, once kind of the medical end of it sorted out, often what helps people is, depending what the circumstances are, but for a lot of people, talking therapy is really, really good. So going to see a counsellor or a therapist. So contacting a place like SOSAD, where you can go and you can learn to deal with what are the issues are that are causing you to feel this way. And it's like if there's addiction involved, it often means that you have to go and get specialist help there. The thing, probably the most difficult thing I would say to people is that often going to the hospital or somewhere, and then you find that you're sent home. We hear about this quite a lot. You sometimes have to go back, okay, and keep going back until you get the right help. There's just something that's just come to my mind, which I think is really, really important, because it's something I come across quite a lot, and that is that people, not everybody needs medication. That's really important, but some people do. And what we find happens is people are put on medication, and not always. Some doctors are very, very good at explaining about medication and stuff like that. Others aren't. So it's good to know, ask questions. If the person that's feeling suicide is not well enough, that's where it's good to have a friend or a family member there to doing that support. Because often the person that is feeling suicidal is not in the headspace to be able to do the things for themselves. They might need somebody to advocate for them. Yeah. But what often happens is the doctor might prescribe, or the psychiatric department might prescribe a medication for, say, an antidepressant. And what we find happen is they might take it for a few weeks and they think it's not doing any good. And what they do is they stop taking it, but they never think of going back to the doctor or going back to the psychiatric department. Yeah. So if you look at it, if you had a chest infection and you went to the GP and he gives you an antibiotic, it doesn't work. What do? You go back to the doctor, say that antibiotic didn't work. But people are not inclined to do that with their mental health. Yeah.
And so you'd say, don't be afraid to be an annoyance to the doctors or the medical professional or the emergency.
That's my one regret with my own son, that I wasn't more forceful and that I was a bit afraid. A coward, to be quite honest with you. I suppose him dying gave me the courage that I didn't know I had.
Yeah.
And so, getting the medical attention. If somebody comes to you and they're suicidal, one of the biggest things you can do is just to listen.
Yeah.
Just listen to them. That's very, very hard to do. You have to listen without judgment, so non-judgmental. So you can hear a person tell you something that maybe you think, oh, for God's sake, we've all gone through that. Say a relationship as a young person. The relationship is broken up, and you can be kind of flippant and say, oh, sure, we all went through that. You know, years ago they'd say there's plenty more fish in the sea and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But to that person, that is their problem. And by you undermining it or whatever, that's why the listening is so important. Don't keep the stuff to yourself. So don't take on the whole responsibility. If you think this person's at risk, get the help. Get outside help. Don't hold on to yourself, because then you will end up sick with worry, trying to keep an eye on this person. It has come down sometimes with people. If it's a case that you have gone to a doctor, the person is suicidal in their home, sometimes you have to sit. And if you want to use the word suicide watch, you have to do that. But I think it's important. I can't stress enough about going back. Okay? Because I think, and it's like with the medication stuff, if it doesn't work, just like with your antibiotic, go back and say, this is not working for me.
Yeah.
So it's treating this and looking at it the same way as if the person, say, was having a heart attack or something, or they've broken their leg. If you broke your leg and you go and you get a cast on and you're in dreadful pain and it's not working, you've got to go back to the hospital, go back, whatever. Do the same with your mental health. And remember that it all links. So if you are feeling physically unwell, we often mentally don't feel great, and vice versa. The best description I can give, imagine that your body is like a bicycle, and that one wheel of the bike is your mental health, the other wheel is your physical health, and the frame and all that is what is the body that holds it all together. If you get something goes wrong with the chain, it's not going to work. So it's about trying to imagine what it's like, and they work in tandem. So if one is not working out of sync, the rest of you are out of sync. A simple way of looking at it is, if you wake up in the morning and you have a head cold, there's nothing seriously wrong with you, but you're going to feel a bit down and a bit blue. So the most important thing is, please, I can't stress this enough, do not die by suicide because you are embarrassed or ashamed to actually say it. The amount of particularly men I have come across over the years that are actually, the last thing they would do is admit to somebody that I'm feeling suicidal or I've thought of ending my life. So the more you keep this in, and that's what happens in families. That's where our problem is. You can't sometimes cope with this on your own. You need to go and get the experts involved. And if that means your GP, the hospital, if that means counselling, and counselling can be really good because it gives people an opportunity in a safe place to be able to say all the things that they need to say to somebody without judgment, without... And confidentiality, I think, is so important, to be able to say something to someone and knowing that nobody else is going to know about it. So, and as I said, if it doesn't work the first time you go, it's like with therapy. You can get a therapist, a counsellor, they can be really good. For some reason, you don't gel with them. But that doesn't mean you stop.
I've been there myself, I've gone through counsellors till I got a good one. It does take time. And it can be a thing, it can be different types of therapy. People's different counsellors have different approaches. The other thing that's really important is not to have more than one therapy at a time. It can be quite dangerous going to two counsellors because you can be told they might eventually end up in the same place. Okay? So the thing about it is not to be afraid to step outside, to seek the help that is there, and sometimes to just push yourself a little bit more. And if someone comes to you, to listen without judgment.
That's really, really important. Harder, easier said than done.
Stay